Wow. The loudest applause we've had all week, and it's because of our next guest. As we've seen over the course of 4 days here on Front Row Tampa Bay, there is a bigger story to tell about the business climate in our region. One of the exciting stories is Florida's high-tech corridor. With more than 20,000 technology companies, the corridor competes with clusters like the Silicon Valley and North Carolina's Research Triangle. I'm joined now by Randy Berridge, who serves as president of the Florida High-Tech Corridor Council and has done so for the past 16 years.
16 years.
Right? You worked for AT&T for 31 years, and that's the genesis of your involvement in the High-Tech Corridor Council. Tell us what happened.
We saved a major expansion, Frank, from going offshore. Though we had some new city, county, and state incentives, they paled by comparison. As most opportunities to save major high-tech manufacturing operations do, they paled by comparison to what was available offshore. What made the difference for us was a commitment from University of South Florida here in the Tampa Bay area and the University of Central Florida in the Orlando area, covering the entire 23 counties in the central part of the great state of Florida. Commitment from President Hitt at UCF and then President Betty Castor at USF to provide research funding to the initiative. We didn't have the research capability offshore. We did thanks to those two great universities here. That made the difference. It saved a $1.4 billion, 1,500 job expansion from going offshore.
You give a lot of credit to Congressman Dan Webster, who's in the House, the Florida House, for initiating this back in 1996. He was a guest the other day.
On Monday, I had the opportunity to see that, and I want to do a shout out to my good friend Stu Rogel and his team at the Tampa Bay Partnership for making all this possible. Dan Webster was the incoming Speaker of the Florida House. Tony Jennings was the incoming President of the Senate. So you had an interesting confluence of a little company called AT&T, saving a major expansion from going offshore, two universities in the state of Florida willing to talk to each other and work with each other, just outstanding. And then two leaders in our state, as well as the support from the governor's office, to provide the funding to help make this happen on a recurring basis.
And I don't know what the number of high-tech companies would have been at that time in 1996. As I said, I was just figuring out how to get a home computer at that time, as a lot of us were. But it's 20,000 companies now?
20,000 companies basically in the central part of the great state of Florida. We have about 70% of the high-tech companies in our state. One thing you and I spoke about just a few minutes ago was if you were looking for something for your viewers to take away today in terms of high-tech in Florida, I would ask them to consider the Florida High-Tech Corridor Council, or as we call it, the corridor. They are certainly aware of Silicon Valley and Stanford that made that happen. They're certainly aware of Boston, the I-28 corridor, and MIT and others that made that happen. They're certainly aware of the Research Triangle, which would be UNC and NC State and Duke that made that happen. No doubt they're also aware of Austin and the University of Texas. But what I'd like them to focus on, if I could, is the fact that our corridor has the second, the seventh, and the eighth largest universities in the land in UCF, USF, and UF.
And UF became part of this equation in 2005.
2005,
now,
that's
you have,
correct.
literally, you do have that triangle between Tampa, Gainesville, over to Orlando.
But if I may, in our world, we think it's a little bigger than a triangle. It's called a corridor.
Yep.
We certainly have, in terms of research, $1.2 billion between our three universities, 115,000 students at those universities. Also, if you look at a measure of innovation in a region, I would submit your viewers would probably agree it's patents. So if you look at the entire state of California, I don't have a stat on Silicon Valley, but just the entire state of California, last year about 350 patents. If you look at Boston and MIT, about 170. If you look at the Research Triangle, about 150. If you look at Austin and University of Texas, about 150. But you add our three together, 250 patents, a measure of strength in terms of research capability. That's what I'd like them to remember.
Outstanding. Randy
Really?
Berridge, the Florida High-Tech Corridor Council.
Right.
Very good. Thank you much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. I appreciate it. Okay, time now for our last word on our last day.